Today is Monday, March 18th, 2024. This is episode 122 of The Tech John, the technology store where we discuss the top tech news of the week and how it affects and disaffects communities of color. From Columbus, Ohio, I'm your host, Robb Dunewood.
And coming out of Philly, it's your girl, Tech Life Steph.
And we do not have AKAs. This is like the second time in like a month we ain't had AKAs.
AKA Brother Tech is Where's Waldo
really?
about now.
So yeah, he is I think he's coming off of a I don't want to call it a little excursion because we know where he went, and it ain't really that ain't nothing little about going where he went, but he will be back next week with the show. But we got a lot of tech that we're gonna get to this week. So just to go ahead and kick it off, I will let folks know that the Tech John is, in addition to being a podcast, is a live stream, and we also have an after party. And one of the ways that you can actually get access to that live stream and that after party, and also a ad-free version of the show, is by becoming a patron and supporting the show. So you can do that by heading over to patreon.com/the Tech John. That's the Tech JAWN. Over there, we've got multiple tiers. Any one of which gets you access to all the things we just talked about. And we'd love to have you supporting the show so we can bring this tech to you the way that we bring it to you. So with that, Steph, let's get into this first thing we're going to talk about. Is actually picking up a little bit from what we talked about last week with TikTok and about how the federal government is they I think we even said last week, they for real about, potentially, banning TikTok. So since we last met, the House of Representatives overwhelmingly voted that this is something that they want to do. I want to say that it was like 352 to 65. That is bipartisanship unlike we ever see, coming out of the House. So they are serious about this TikTok ban. And we shouldn't really call it a TikTok ban. It is what the federal government wants is for ByteDance to divest.
You got to use air quotes for that.
It's not really a ban. It is you need to sell your U.S. assets to someone that is not based in China if you want to continue to operate here. So it's not a ban. The ban is a consequence of the sale not happening. But the House passed it. President Biden, as we said last week, will sign it if it gets to his desk. So right now it's sitting with the Senate.
I don't see this making it past the Senate. I don't. I feel like it'll be close, the vote, but I don't necessarily see this and I don't know why. It's kind of just a visceral sort of intuition kind of thing. But I just don't necessarily see this making it past. I think there's enough public opposition to this, and I think the Senate will be a little more thoughtful in hearing the argument laid out, because I feel like the House just rushed to do this to try to look strong on something in an election year. Everybody is all up in arms, and nobody's really thinking about the fact that nothing in this bill will get us safer on the internet or on TikTok. Either way, nothing in this bill does anything to preclude China from stealing our information or buying our information or influencing our elections in another way. So the bill doesn't actually do anything necessarily besides give somebody here in the United States an opportunity to become very, very wealthy, or wealthier, maybe, when they take over ownership of the thing, if they can take over ownership of the thing. But I say all that to say, I think the Senate will be a lot more thoughtful with those facts. And because it won't actually do what it claims that it wants to try to do for the American people, it's not going to get the votes it needs in the Senate to pass.
So speaking of people potentially making money off of this, one of them would be former Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, who actually was on Squawk Box last week, and he is putting together a consortium that are trying to come up with the billions and billions of dollars that it would take to buy, TikTok. Now, to be clear, they're not talking about buying the entirety of ByteDance. They're just talking about buying the U.S. portion of it that we will block if they decide not to sell it. But it's interesting because Mnuchin, when he was Treasury Secretary, was pushing the administration to, hey, y'all need to do an executive action or something to go ahead and block this.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of it. But one of the things that has come out, and what, actually, I should say this. One of the things that Mnuchin said, and I'm going to quote here, is that there is no way that the Chinese government would ever let a U.S. company own something like this in China, which is interesting because what came out, I think, Friday last week is that this is based off of Reuters reporting that the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, launched a clandestine campaign on the Chinese social media aimed at turning public opinion in China against its government during the Trump administration.
Right.
So this is one of the things that is interesting to me about this whole TikTok thing, because TikTok, I got to give it to it. By them in the app saying, hey, call your congressman and get this out, that probably gave Senate the pause that Senate now has, because you would think that, well, if this passed with this much bipartisanship in the House, the president is already saying that we will that he will sign this, even though it's 50-50 in the Senate. It is a Democrat that basically is the Senate majority leader, just by the way the math works, because of the vice president. You would think this would be done already. The fact that it isn't, somebody is like, let me put my finger up in the air and let's figure out what's going on. But the really interesting thing is that a lot of people are thinking, because I saw a lot of sentiment last week that, well, what about Facebook and what about TikTok or TikTok? What about Twitter or X? And what about all these other social media platforms that are doing all these things that are very similar to what TikTok does? And I contend that the federal government, I don't want to say they don't care about your data, but that's not the thing they care most about. What they care about,
government does. You see, you keep saying I won't say. The federal government does not care about our data. Well, if they did, we would have a version of GDPR in this country already. And that's just the bottom line. And so that is not, I won't say they don't. Well, we can soften it a bit, and we won't say they don't care, but we can say it's not a priority. If that makes it go down any easier.
I was going to say they don't care enough to pass a bill. They don't care enough to pass a bill.
It's not a priority.
The reason that this bill could be passed, the reason that this bill could be passed is because what the federal government does not want is exactly what Reuters is reporting that the CIA was trying to do in China. They don't want a social media platform. It's like, TikTok is huge. I believe there's pushing 160 million Americans that have accounts on TikTok. So the data is not the concern. It is, well, what can you do when you have that many people on a social media platform? Oh, you can sway folks' opinion.
How can you manipulate?
You can manipulate how people feel about things. And that's where the government is coming in saying, whoa, we cannot have the state of China, the government of China being able to manipulate our populace with an application that we know that those kind of things work.
It wouldn't even, I don't even think that's how this gets done. That's the thing. If you're still not solving the problem, because bringing TikTok into America underneath some American umbrella business entity, doesn't solve the problem of disinformation on the platform. I mean, now, granted, if we get quote unquote control over the algorithm, we can put our own propaganda out there, which I think is most likely to happen, but you're still going to get, hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of bot accounts from China and Russia and wherever else that are designed to create dissension. I was at a did I talk about this last week? I don't think so, because I think I just did it last Wednesday. Oh, I was talking about it on the radio the other day. Yeah, I was at a event on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, where it was a panel talking about social media and the election and, misinformation, disinformation. How is AI? It was really more AI focused. How is AI gonna, play a role in the misinformation in the election this year? But social media was a large part of that conversation. And there was a woman there, that used to work at Facebook, and it was kind of like, at this point, they don't necessarily, and she was saying, she was like, we already know at this point, they don't even have to do much. This country has degraded to the point where the polarization is so extreme. All they got to do is sprinkle a teeny little bit of gasoline on that fire, and we'll take it from there ourselves. We've ruined it for ourselves, basically. She was saying, you're not even going to need some major campaign from some foreign entity, or any major manipulation of the algorithm, because the milk is already spoiled at this point. So it's just like, again, all of this is just lip service to me. I hear it, like I hear Charlie Brown's mom, or in Teacher, the adult, the adults in Charlie Brown. That's what I'm hearing right now, because I'm just like, you're not actually doing anything with this legislation that's going to get you what you say you want. So I just, yeah.
No, I'm going to the basics of this, and I was on Daily Tech News Show last Thursday. Our contributor last week was Justin Robert Young, who does a show called Politics. And he made a good point. It's not about the data. It's about the sentiment. It's about, can we get you to feel a certain way about a certain thing? Can we, and like I said, you're talking about 150 to 160 million people. That is just, we can't allow that. And to your point, it's like, well, how is that any different from here? It's like, well, here, if it's somebody doing it on Facebook, well, that's your free speech. You can be a demagogue if you're from here, but we're not going to let you be, from a, from
somewhere else,
country that we're not competitive with, that we actually are not on great terms with, to allow them to influence our, our sentiment.
Quite honestly, that's light work. You know what I mean? Like, again, it's not going to take much to stir that type of dissension in this country at this point. We did it to ourselves, and it's probably been getting done since Cambridge Analytica in 2016 and earlier than that. So it's just like, can we do something else? It's funny. Did you see Jeff Jackson's response? Jeff Jackson is the, I want to say he's in the House from let me tell you, I'll tell you real quick. He's very, very popular, built his entire following on TikTok, and all of his popularity comes from him, Jeff Jackson. Yeah, he is the North Carolina. Yeah, he's the representative from North Carolina. Like literally, would come on, and he was so sincere, and, hey, this is what's happening in Congress right now. I'm going to keep you posted. I'm here for you. But saying all of that, still voted for the ban. And his whole justification was, I don't think it's going to pass anyway. And it was just like, bro, like,
that's one of those situations where you voted for something before you voted against it. That I don't think it's going to pass as never a reason he was to vote for something or vote against something.
And then he tried to, throw something in there like, well, I was privy to some stuff that most people don't know, that sort of gave me pause and made me understand why this might be necessary, and yada, yada, yada. He was very, but then he had to come back on TikTok and be like, I apologize, y'all. I got it wrong. I was tripping, and I get it now. And I was wrong. And it's just like, I think more and more people and more politicians are going to come around to seeing that, again, this is not getting you what you want at all.
We will see, because like I said, with the bipartisanship that it passed, and usually it is not the House that passes stuff. Stuff hardly ever gets done there. It is the Senate that will have something that they'll send to the House, and the House can't, make their mind up on it. But this is like, it is very, very, very bipartisan. It's like you need 2/3. There's only 50 something odd people who voted against this.
I'm waiting for the money trail, because there's definitely a follow the money thing going on here that's gonna blow up in everybody's face at some point.
The last thing that I will say, and then we can move on to another story after this, unless you have a rebuttal point, is that I cannot call this yet. I still think it is probably 50-50, 55-45 that they may actually ban this. And here's why I say this, because folks like, you say his name, Jeff Jackson, the folks in Congress, many of them have access to data that we don't have access to. And if someone is looking, I just feel at some point somebody in the room is saying, so here is how our people are being manipulated by the likes of TikTok, by the likes of Meta, by the likes of Snapchat. This is how easy it is to get someone to move by doing this or showing parts. How do we know this? Because this is what we were trying to do over in China before they shut it all down.
And
so they might
enough,
be looking at that and saying, yeah,
no,
we need to go ahead and shut this down.
You need to go ahead and do the same thing you think China's doing if you think that's going to work, because I just feel like there are just far too many people that app has reached a critical mass. And you're going to alienate too large a voter block if you do this to keep it going. I think they look good for trying. I think they look tough on social media for trying and for getting that vote passed so overwhelmingly and bipartisanly, if that's a word. I think they look good for trying. But I think, again, like you said, have literally half the country is on this app.
Half.
Half.
Really, when you think about it, when you think about the number of people who have phones, more than half, well over more than half.
Yeah,
when you
half the country, almost 10 million small businesses. Like you can't alienate that user base by doing something like this. It would be career suicide, I think. And I think there are enough senators, again, who will be thoughtful enough to extrapolate the entire case and the entire argument to be like, nah, you ain't gonna get me caught out here like this.
No, Chuck Schumer absolutely said, hold up right fast. He's like, no, let's slow down for a second.
Second thought, exactly.
Did you see? You see the number of phone calls that my office got? Let's go ahead and rethink this.
Pump your brakes a little bit, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen in the Senate.
So Tech Life Steph, there's a story. I believe this just came out today, or it might have come out over the weekend. But Apple is in talks to let Google Gemini power the iPhone's AI. And I'm looking at folks' reactions to this today. And let me just read this here. Apple's AI initiatives are focused on features that operate its devices rather than ones delivered via the cloud. So Apple is seeking a partner to do the heavy lifting of generative AI, including functions of creating images and writing essays based on simple prompts. Now, if we go back a few months ago, Tim Cook confirmed that Apple is working on generative AI, and some of those things will be coming later this year. But I always took that to think that he was working on it on the phone, on the iPhone. For things that they would do on device. I never thought that they were going to go out and try to compete with Google or compete with OpenAI or compete with Microsoft or Amazon. So I was just really shocked that people were shocked that this is what Apple is doing. It's like, this is kind of what Apple does. If Apple were to go and try to compete with Google Gemini or compete with OpenAI, with ChatGPT, or compete with Copilot from Microsoft, they literally would be competing with companies that's all. I don't say that's all that they do, but it is the major part of their business. Google is a search company. AI should be the thing that it is thinking about most. Microsoft, does a lot of things, but where they make their money is in Azure and in their cloud services and stuff like that. And AI. And then OpenAI, of course, is an AI company. So clearly that's what they're thinking of. I never thought that Apple was going to come out and try to compete with them, just because in the same way that Siri is the most, I don't say it's the most used, it's the most available assistant on smartphones.
Yeah.
But Siri, I think that even most Apple users would say, most iPhone users would say Siri does not compare to like Alexa or to Google or some of these other things, just because they build their thing just for them. These other platforms build their thing for everyone.
Right.
And that's always going to give you an advantage. So I was kind of shocked that the number of people today that came out was like, oh, wow, I can't believe that Apple's going back on what they said just a couple months ago. And it's like, I think it was always we're doing this thing and we're going to do this thing when we figure out how many billions of dollars Google's going to give us for.
Right. And it's like a yes and kind of thing. It's funny. One of the accounts I follow on Instagram showed a picture and it looked legitimate. I don't think it was AI generated of Tim Cook and Sergey. Not Sergey. Who's the new guy over at Google?
Sundar Pichai?
Yeah,
No,
yes,
that's
yeah. No, that was Sundar.
okay.
Yeah, at at a lunch or somewhere. Like it looks like someone got the picture through a window, of them somewhere. And like I said, it could have been AI generated, but I don't think it was. It definitely looked legitimate. But yeah, it's just and the crazy part is, a year or two from now, Apple probably will come out with their own AI because I think they eventually get around to doing their own thing once they have it sort of perfected in the Apple way. But this gets them in the game now, and it's a huge sort of distraction for Google from the whole Black Nazi controversy they just had with all their stuff, and Black George Washington and Black Viking controversy. So
Yeah.
I think it's a win-win for both of them, and it makes perfect sense. But
Well,
hopefully Google has taken care of some of those issues.
it is definitely a win for Apple because if this deal, because it hasn't been, this hasn't been confirmed yet. I don't think you'll hear anything until probably their developer conference, which comes up sometime in the late spring. What is it? WWDC, I think that is Apple's developer conference. But the thing that is interesting here is that I always thought this is what Apple would do. I always thought that it would be Google because they've already got the relationship with Google. Google gives Apple, or I shouldn't say they don't give because they get something in return, but they pay Apple billions of dollars to be the default search on, on that platform.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars. So when I think of it, I don't know that Apple intends to get into the generative AI from a cloud standpoint, because if they do that, they're always going to be hamstrung in the sense that, well, they're only providing it for people who use iPhones. And although iPhone is dominating here in North America, and it dominates in Japan, and it dominates in places like Australia and in Canada, on Earth, Android is still the thing. Now, there's a lot of reasons why Android is still the thing. And, and maybe, over time, Apple will continue to catch up there. But there are significantly more people who use Android devices than use Apple devices. There are significantly more people who use PCs than use Macs. So Apple is, I've said this many, many times, Apple is a hardware company that also happens to be one of the best marketing engines the earth has ever seen. But when it comes to the software for their stuff is cool, but you really don't see people out there using software that Apple developed for anything other than their own products. It's just not how they roll. So I'm pretty sure that, there is, what is it called? Keynote on Apple. That's the PowerPoint competitor.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, a lot of people use that. It compares nothing to what to what people use in PowerPoint. Is there even is there an Excel counterpart that Apple has?
I don't think so. There's
Hey,
number. I see something called numbers.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my little bar at the bottom right now, and I see something called numbers right next to Keynote and right next to Pages. So that's probably some type of spreadsheet program. I just downloaded because I'm paying for Microsoft Office anyway. So I downloaded it for Mac onto my machine. I don't use any of those.
I don't know this to be true. I just feel it in my heart. My gut would tell me that numbers is a rounding error compared to Excel. I would even say the numbers is a rounding error compared to Google, to Google Sheets.
Absolutely.
Because Google Sheets is it's not a rounding error. There are a lot of people who use Google, who use Google services, but it's still, Office is the thing. And I don't think that Apple really is trying to even compete there. So in the same way, I don't think they're really trying to compete on, clearly they're not trying to compete on search. They've not built their own search engine. And I don't think they're going to try to build a Copilot competitor. I don't think they're going to try to build an OpenAI competitor, because that's just not their core business. They'd only be doing it for their ecosystem. And in order to be really, really good at those things, you have to build those things for Earth, which doesn't make sense for Apple. That's just Robb's opinion.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I something in me feels like even if it only ends up being for their hardware, and I'm thinking even more specifically, something with the new headset. I feel like Apple does not want to be left out of this wave. And it'll be just interesting to see how they sort of insert their own ideology and their own brand into this AI conversation, because they're going to do it some kind of way, because they did, I think in that article you shared, Tim Cook did say, while they are looking at, the integration of Gemini, they have their own AI things sort of coming up later this year as well. So they're going to figure out how to just have a presence, because I don't think they want to be left out of the party.
Right. So this next story that we're going to talk about, we actually mentioned it and talked about it, and it was like, Don, what are you doing? But back when we heard that Don Lemon, he's formerly of CNN. I believe Don was at CNN for like 17 or 18 years, so he was there for a minute.
Yeah,
he was there for a while. But he unceremoniously was let go from CNN because he was giving his opinion too much on stuff, and people didn't like it, and so they decided to let him go. And he decided that he's going to start his own media production company and do his own Don Lemon show. Now, once that was announced that he was, once the rumors came out that he might be thinking of doing that, it was X kept coming at him saying, hey,
right,
you need to come work with us, do some type of distribution deal. Long story short, that news came out, I believe it was in January. They're like, what is Don doing?
It was because he talked about he was required to go to CES. I was so mad. I left CES before the real thing actually even started. I was only there on Monday. But he was at CES. Like, they kind of trotted him out, as a little show pony, so to speak, to talk about this deal.
So Don Lemon has his own production company. The Don Lemon Show is something that is 100% owned by his company, and he essentially had up until last Thursday had worked out a deal where he was going to own his show 100%, and he was just going to basically, in addition to YouTube, in addition to various radio channels, in addition to basically all the distribution places you could put podcast or video type podcast content, he was going to release it there, including he was going to put it on X.
Right.
And what the folks at X did was they came to him and said, hey, we would love to work with you and partner with you where your show is still yours. All we want are 10 to 12 original pieces of content per month that we get 24-hour exclusive rights on.
Right.
And he said no, I'll take him at his word. He said no multiple times. They kept coming back and kept sweetening the pot.
Yeah, they showed him the bag.
Yeah, you were alluding to the Pivot podcast with Kara Swisher, and I guess she and Don are actually friends. I think they actually are good friends outside of doing just the stuff that they do together on television. But she was like, "Don't do it, don't do it."
She told him not to do it. Yeah, she was like,
"Don't do it."
I'm telling you.
And then the bag keeps getting bigger. The bag keeps getting bigger. It is kind of like, okay, maybe.
At some point, you can't turn down, like, you're not especially when you're not actually doing any additional work. You're not like, you were going to do this show anyway. And so if it's just a matter of, let it live here for a little bit, and then the additional content he talked about in the Pivot didn't have to be longer than 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah. So literally
that's basically
a reel.
It's 10 videos a month.
Right.
But the thing is,
a month.
He can use that same content on other platforms after they get their 24-hour exclusive. So it's like, so y'all just going to give me more money to do what I was already going to do, in addition to
license my content. Basically.
Yeah. So he did an interview today after the airing of a show, because the actual show that we're talking about, the Don Lemon Show, the contract got canceled. Why did it get canceled? Because he did an interview with Elon Musk last week, and the interview, I don't want to say that I listened to all 1 hour and 3 minutes of it. But at 1.25 speed, I probably listened to a good 35 minutes and just kept, skipping,
Yeah,
forward
I probably
once I got
got
the
through
gist of what was
about
going on.
45 minutes of it. Yeah, yeah.
And for probably the first 50 minutes, he was probably good and would have had a contract. It was the last 10 minutes of questions that he's asking.
Don
That,
started
all right,
twisting that
Don.
knife,
It's like,
boy.
all right. It's like, okay, I done gave you these layups.
He started
Did you?
touching that. But to Don's credit, he's a journalist and
He
he
is.
asked the questions a journalist would ask. It was not, I don't think, intended to be it wasn't a softball interview, but it also wasn't a gotcha interview either.
It definitely was not a gotcha
He
interview.
really was just asking the questions I think most people probably wanted answers to. I don't think he asked Elon anything he hadn't been asked in the past. He just was on the spot because this is your golden boy that you paying money to. So you sitting down with this interview thinking that I think Elon probably thought it was going to be something different than what it was. And Don was like, "Oh no, don't get it twisted, bitch. I'm a journalist. I'm a
literally.
real journalist, and I'm going to ask you the real questions, and I'm gonna keep asking and drilling down until you answer." And I think Elon Musk is a giant man baby who is not used to being challenged or questioned about his decision making, and he didn't know what to do, and he got mad and took his ball and went home.
So this is what I honestly think happened. Is like, I don't know if there's really no reason that Musk or anyone at X should not have thought that Don was going to do exactly what Don did. Because here's the thing. It wasn't a gotcha. It wasn't one of those where I told you what I'm going to do and then go do something different.
And I whip out like a secret recording of you saying some stuff. Yeah, it wasn't at all.
It was not that. These were questions that you have to anticipate when you are the richest person on earth, and you have been quoted and recorded saying racist stuff repeatedly.
And we got all the tweets right here. Like, I got a list of all your tweets right here in black and white. So I'm only asking you about your views on things. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not making anything up. I'm not alleging anything. I'm asking you about what you said, on this platform. And it's just like, sometimes you got to answer to that shit.
Right. So that was the interview. Like I said, it got contentious at points, but interviews sometimes do. They're not friends. And maybe that's what I don't know what Elon was thinking, because at every turn, Don Lemon is telling folks, this is my show. I'm going to ask the questions I want to ask. There's no limits on anything I ask. This is all stuff that is up front. And as you're saying, Steph, it wasn't a gotcha style interview. It's just that he was asking questions that Musk and team should have fully anticipated were going to be asked.
I think this speaks to, everybody, all of the, contention around how good a business person Elon Musk is, and everybody that he inherited, he's not that great a businessman, whatever. I think this sort of speaks to that in the sense that all Elon Musk was trying to do was get the ad revenue back on the platform. And he knew that the platform had swung way too far to the right. And he needed to get some quote unquote left wing people back on the platform. So who better than this disgraced, ousted person who may have a bone to pick with CNN or whoever, but still, in the public's eye leans left. Let me just get him on here, throw a bag of money at him so we can say we got him, and then go ahead and start getting this getting this advertising dollar, getting these advertising dollars. Like, that literally, I think, was Elon Musk's sole motivation for offering Don. I don't think he knew anything about what Don, because at the beginning of the interview, Don was like, "Have you watched any of my interviews?" Like, he was setting them up. You could tell he was setting them up. He was like, "Have you watched any of my interviews? Do you know what I do? Have you looked at any of my body of work over the last 20 years? Because I'm about to go for your neck right now. I'm about to come for your neck, and I don't think you understand how your neck is about to become for, because you didn't do your homework." And Elon clearly didn't do his homework. He was thinking, I got this liberal gay man who is going to woo all of these advertisers back to this platform. And he played himself.
Here's the thing. A couple of points. Number one, Don Lemon, if you followed him for more than the last 4 or 5 years, Don Lemon is not like this super left liberal dude
at all.
He is pretty centrist on, I would even say in some ways, even center right on a lot of the ways he thinks about a lot of things,
That's
as
right.
a lot of millionaire people are, because it's like, I don't like to pay taxes either. But he's not like one of these far leaning left type, types of folks. But one of the things that Musk said, and he said this, there's been multiple tweets now, but in the message that he sent to Lemon's people, were that, well, I didn't think that this was going to be a rehashing of CNN. It's like, dude worked at CNN for 17 years. It's like, what did you think you were getting? It's like, you had to have known that he wasn't going to. It's like, yes, Don Lemon is no longer part of CNN, but it's not like he is going, you know what? Well, that didn't work. Let me go and change up everything that made me who I am, as an interviewer and host of TV shows where I've been nominated for Emmys. Let me just go change all that up. That did not happen.
Elon effed around and found out.
So I really think that what it was that Elon was just not as he just couldn't. I don't want to get into that man's head, but the only thing I can gather is that he just didn't think that Lemon was going to ask him these questions or press him until he got an answer or saw that you simply are not going to answer it, and then editorialize over top of it. I don't think that he saw that was going to happen. It upset him. It made him maybe embarrassed him a little bit. It made him mad. And then, like what an insolent child would do, I got hurt, so I'm now going to hurt you. Well, how can I hurt you? Because I'm a billionaire. I got all the money in the world, but you don't. So I'm going to take these probably millions of dollars away from you. Yeah. But the thing is like it's hard to wreck a multi-millionaire's life by telling them that they ain't gonna get a couple $1 million here and there.
Right. And he helped him more than he hurt him.
Oh my goodness.
Because you cannot buy this kind of publicity. Don Lemon is anywhere anybody will have him speaking about this thing. I haven't looked at how many views this interview has gotten. I watched it straight out of my news app through Apple. So I didn't go to YouTube to see how many views this particular interview has gotten so far, but I'm sure it's going to be racking up into the millions, and he'll be like Club Shay Shay, with getting more money off this interview, ad revenue from this interview than he ever got from CNN in the first place. So it's just like, bro.
I made that same point. It's like, he's going to blow up kind of like how Club Shay Shay did. Now he's not going to get that many views. This is news still. It's still a new person talking to a new, figure in the news. It's not Cat Williams.
But this sets him up for that.
But it sets him up for it.
Because Cat Williams may very well be his next guest. You know what I mean? Like Don can do whatever he wants now. So he can bring on a Cat Williams. He can bring on a Monique. He can do whatever he wants. So it's just like this set him up to crush it, and I'm not mad at it at all. He's not gonna get that money. I was listening to the Pivot. Kara was like, you're not getting paid, right?
Well,
you're never gonna see that money.
Not till the judge says so. Right. I think that was not till the judge says so.
The one thing I thought was crazy was he didn't sign anything,
so
and I'm like,
there's been more on that. Don didn't sign anything. He is an agent of his company. He allowed his lawyers, his agents, and all those folks, and he said they may have signed whatever they needed to sign. But the fact that Elon Musk in his message to him said contract canceled, that means that you can't cancel a contract that doesn't exist.
True. It's true. So it'll be interesting because this is probably going to have to go to court or arbitration or something.
It's going to go to court. And Elon Musk is not saying we never had a meeting of the minds and I'm not paying you anything. We never discussed money. No, it's like there was a discussion. There was a meeting of the minds, because why would you say contract canceled if that were the case? Yeah. But I just think, like I said, I think that what you have in Elon Musk, and you see this in other public figures, that he has had so much money for so much of his life. I mean, he basically was born into it.
Everybody around him.
It gives you, and I'm not saying this of all people who have no one has Elon Musk level of money at this point, but a lot of people had Elon Musk money when he was young. And this does, I don't even want to say that most people that have that kind of money, this turns them into these type of folks, but he for a long time has just been in a situation where he's not been told no by anyone. And things that he could do is that I can disrupt your life by taking things that I have away from you. And that's, to me, what he did. It's like, oh, you know what? You kind of hurt me and maybe embarrassed me.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to take my ball and go home. And I don't know, do you not realize that, well, you're not taking Don Lemon's ball, is his ball. It's like,
right.
and this is how cold Don Lemon is with it. He still put it on X.
Right.
He still put it on. Why? Because he knows that he's going to get millions of people that are eventually going to watch this on that platform.
Elon effed around and found out. The one thing I will say that I was like, Don was on the line, was when he asked him about the ketamine. And once Elon said he had a prescription, I think that should have been the end of that conversation, because I think you are now bordering into this man's personal, private health information, medical information. And if in fact he has a prescription, that should have been off limits at that point. But he kept pressing him about that, which I understand too, because as a CEO, that kind of information does get disclosed typically, and the board needs to know, and yada yada yada. But I felt like he kind of pressed him a little too hard on that once he did say, I have a prescription for the ketamine, even though, he has been seen to be high out of his mind on a number of occasions. I don't know. I felt like that's on the line, but the rest of it, Elon sunk himself with, you know what I mean? He really did.
I want to say that, like I said, I only watched maybe about 40 minutes of the 63. So I haven't seen everything, but from what I've seen, Elon didn't look terribly bad at any point, because we already know that this is what you think. We already know that these, you're being asked questions about things that we already know you said. It wasn't like there was like some new audio that we got of him saying something crazy and he's, or crazier that he's being asked about. These are things that you're already on the record for having said. Now, folks who are, I would say, on the Elon camp of this are going to say, well, how many times is Don Lemon going to ask the same question? It's like, well, a good reporter is going to keep asking that question until he thinks he's going to get an answer, or until he thinks that it becomes clear that I'm not. And I think that's what, Don did, because I actually, didn't think this was like the greatest interview, for two reasons. One is because Elon is just not great in interview situations. Never really has been. He's just not.
I think it was I think it was an attempt to either show maybe that he doesn't have justification for a lot of the stuff that he says and does, and because he couldn't back up a lot of the stuff that he was saying and doing. And I think it's important to shine a light on that, because people do take what he says as gospel and what he retweets and things like that. And it's like, stand on business, Elon. If this is what you believe and this is what you say, you're retweeting things and you're like, oh, I don't believe everything I retweet. And he's like, well, why would you retweet it? You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of that kind of thing in there, and he didn't want to say the quiet part out loud, or whatever. But
this is the feel that I got from it.
You need to stand on business.
I think that Elon Musk wants to be able to act like he's not Elon Musk in a lot of ways. Right. If he was just some dude named, Eleanor Muskhaven, just some dude from South Africa that's moved here that is just got an account on X, he can say all this stuff and really nobody's going to take him to task on it. The reason they're taking him to task is because he is the CEO of Tesla. He is the CEO of SpaceX. He does own Neuralink. He does own what is the other one? The X. I just forgot that quick. The old X. That's why he can't say some of the things that he says. He just got edited on his own platform for putting out misinformation about some stuff going on in Haiti last week. Where, for those who don't know, like, Haiti is going through some stuff right now. Yeah. But you've got folks like Elon Musk who are out there talking about, like, they've reverted to cannibalism, this and that and the other. And I think NBC called him out on it. So what does dude do? He gets a video of, some heinous looking videos of people performing, acts of cannibalism and post them on his platform. That all kind of violates the rules of X, even under the current situation. So they had to pull the owner of the platform stuff down. But I think he thinks that I just can do this stuff because I'm just a regular guy. And it's like, no, you're a regular guy who owns these platforms and you own satellites and rockets that put satellites in space and all that kind of stuff. You don't get to do the things that everybody else gets to do.
But he's just like everybody else in that mindset. That's our problem as a country and as a society. People think they can do whatever they want to do with impunity because they want to do it. And he kept going back and forth about, when they got into the content moderation conversation, it was like, well, are you going to moderate this content? What are you doing? He's like, if it's not illegal, it's okay. If you don't have to agree with it. And it's just like, yeah, okay, but there is a nuance to that. And you can call it censorship all you want, but some stuff needs to not be put out there in the general atmosphere. Basically, I'm like, you just don't need to do that. And there's a reason why you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. So it's just like, I don't know. He doesn't want any accountability, and that was obvious. He doesn't want to take any accountability for his actions. Like somebody who's, like you said, has been rich all his life and has never been told no. And
Yeah, there were several points in this interview where he keeps saying, well, let's just wait until after the interview comes out and then people will comment on it on X and we will see how people feel about it. And I got to give it to Don. It's like, yeah, but how people feel are not facts. And he said that multiple times. It's like, how you feel about something does not, in any way determine the factual nature of the things you just said. So it is, I think Don was making the point that it is reckless to put something out that you don't even know if it's true or not, but you're just going to put it out there and then let the zeitgeist determine how they feel about it to determine whether you're right or not. That's just not cool. And I think that's where things started to go south. And like I said, it never got to, it was always contention in the interview. These were not boys hanging out having a beer type interview.
You could tell he didn't want to do it. And he said, he was like, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't you. I don't even want to be here. So I'm just here so I don't get fined.
So yeah, we will be looking at these numbers as they come out. So I just looked right now
to do some numbers.
Yeah, he's already over 100,000 subscribers on his channel that went live today. Or I don't think it went live today. I think it actually went live sometime last week, but he's over 100,000 subscribers. Or not, I'm sorry, 100,000 views on today's video. I didn't check you, so I don't want to be incorrect in how I say that. So this last story we want to talk about, right fast, is that this is one that is it should be something that's kind of like from your hometown. You're from Pittsburgh, right?
I am, and I was very encouraged when I saw that this was happening there.
So there is an organization called Black Tech Nation, and Black Tech Nation actually has a venture capital arm that is called Black Tech Nation Ventures. And they closed a $50 million fund this month. And this is primarily for businesses in the Pittsburgh area. I believe they want like 1 out of every 3 to be there. I don't think they're meeting that, that criteria yet, but they want like 1 out of 3 businesses to be based in the greater Pittsburgh area. But here is the thing. This fund, the BTNV fund, they want to focus on supporting Black, Latinx, female, Indigenous, and LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs. So my question is, with all the stuff that has been happening, like recently we had the Atlanta-based venture capital firm, the Fearless Fund, where they actually got sued by the, I don't want to say the guy because I don't have his name in front of me, but he is the guy that was the lead lawyer that ultimately got affirmative action overturned, at the Supreme Court, and he's now going out and suing companies like the Fearless Fund, because they have specifically set up these funds. In the case of Fearless Fund, it was to help, Black women specifically. Well, you are discriminated against everyone who's not a Black woman. And in the case of, well, if you're not Black or Latinx or female or Indigenous or LGBTQ, I guess that leaves straight white men where you're discriminating against them. I wonder, are they going to see the same kind of heat that you're seeing these other funds like Fearless Fund? Same.
Probably. But I was thinking about this too, not even in the conjunction with this story, but just in general. But just shout out to Kalani Jasmine. She is managing this fund. So a black woman is managing $50 million in Pittsburgh. Just felt like, we needed to name her and give her flowers.
Mhm.
But I was thinking about this. I don't even know why, like last week or at some point. And I feel like because I feel like not necessarily that it is just a matter of semantics, but if you change the language to community impact businesses or something to that effect, I feel like you can get around this because most businesses that I'm familiar with, most startups, African American startups, black startups, Latinx startups, LGBTQ startups, they create companies that solve problems in their communities. You know what I mean? It's typically, and I mean, I can't say that necessarily for every single company, but I think the idea at the beginning, at least, maybe they work with somebody and they figure out how to scale, and now this becomes, something that all of society can benefit from. But I think at the beginning, most of the companies that get this type of funding are working to solve some sort of community problem or address a need in a specific community that is not being addressed by mainstream companies. So I think if you were to just change the language to community impact, we're looking for startups that have a community impact, and just leave it at that. I think that gets you around the whole, "Oh, we're only giving it to black folks" argument.
So I will
I
take
mean,
it a
I'm not
step
an
further.
attorney, clearly,
Can you
but
just open it? Can you just open it up to everyone, and then somehow mathematically just eliminate, uh, all but 1% of the majority? Like I'm not advocating for this. I'm saying this tongue in cheek. But right now, when it comes to African, this is just African American businesses. They receive less than 1%,
less than 1%,
less than
right?
1% of all venture capital
So
funding.
open it up to everybody, and
So
then less than
so
1% of white folks can get the money.
and like I said, I'm saying that, and I think you are too, tongue in cheek. I'm not saying that you should actively discriminate against folks. Well, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth. I'm not saying that, but it's like, okay, what do we have to do? It's like we get less than 1% of the money that's out there, and that's somehow all good and fine.
Right.
But when we say, okay, well, you know what? We're going to put funds together. And there are companies. Google is one of the companies. Alphabet is one of the companies that's behind this. Oracle is one of the companies that's behind it. You have companies that are saying, yes, you know what? We want to go put money behind this because we understand that there's an issue there. So let's see if we can get, African Americans beyond 1%. Can we get them to 2?
Right.
But what's happening is that not only are these companies, because of the heat that they're starting to feel, they're pulling back,
Right.
but these funds can't even keep good employees because I'm worried about we're going to be shut down right now.
It
So
is. It's absolutely ridiculous. But again, like I said, I'm not a legal scholar by any stretch, but I feel like if we can, because they're caught on the language. It's this fund is for black women. Well, you can't just say the fund is for black women. Okay, we can take that language out. We can say this fund is for companies that have a community impact. And what you could do, I feel like anyway, couldn't you still require that community impact be based in certain communities?
I think you could.
I feel like
Um,
you could. I feel like you could.
I think you could language this in the way that you're saying it, that you're going to meet the criteria that the organization was going after. Because chances are the companies that are doing that are going to fall into one of these categories
This is
anyway.
this is
And
all I'm
for the
saying.
and here's the thing, and for the companies that don't, to where it was a company that does not fall into any of these categories, but they're doing the work of what all these other categories are
Then they
doing,
should get the money
then they
anyway.
should get the money anyway.
Right, because we need the
Um,
help. Like,
we
come
should
on, come on through.
absolutely. We should
come on
absolutely,
to the cookout
yes.
and help us out. You know what I mean?
If you are doing all the things that these companies are trying to counteract, and
This
you
is what I'm
happen to
saying.
have all white male founders, then come on, come on, you're invited
Come
to the
through,
cookout.
run it. Yes,
You
run it, run it. And that's and that's the thing. I'm like, I don't want to oversimplify the issue, but I feel very strongly that a very slight language change could potentially solve this problem. I don't know.
So I'm reading here. One of the quotes here is that really folks of all backgrounds could potentially receive support or access and funding to build their ideas. So if you're saying that really folks of all backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
that might be the language that you're talking about. That is actually in the second paragraph of the article that we're pulling this from. So like I said, I know that people are going, folks are litigious. So there's going to be someone who's going to say, I don't think that you should be able to have anything that calls out specifically women or black
Right.
men or
Right.
black women or Latino women or Latino men or LGBTQ plus.
But
You can't even say those things. I'm sure that someone is going to come out and say that,
yeah,
but you
yeah.
cannot say that here we're going to give you examples of what we're looking for, and then you list them. But anyone can apply.
But anybody can apply.
Yeah.
And it's just and again, the language, but words matter. That's the thing. And language is important. And this particular fund says with a focus on supporting these specific groups, but anybody's welcome to apply. So the language matters. Like we're focusing on addressing disparities in funding, but we're not preventing anybody else from necessarily applying to be funded. And I think, like I said, I think that's how you get around it. It's also it. I mean, like I said, I don't want to oversimplify and say it's all semantics, but I think the language is how you get around this.
Or you've got to go to those other funds that actually have some allies and say, so how are y'all able to only do 0.89% to African Americans when they make up almost 15% of the population?
$1 billion funds.
How do you legally get away with that?
Right.
And who knows? Maybe there will be some language that comes out of these cases to where, okay, well, if that's the case here, then what about this company? What about this company? And all the venture capital firms that historically have,
everybody that has left a meeting because they weren't a good fit, that list, I can just sit here all day. You're not a good fit for us. Sorry, you're not a good fit. It's just not a good fit. And the fits, the things that fit will fit.
You're wearing a Star Wars shirt. I'm really more Star Trek. So we're just going to go ahead and end the meeting now.
We're going to pass. Yeah, we're going to pass. You're just not a good fit. You're not a good fit.
I like both Star Wars and Star Trek.
It is. It's ridiculous, though, that we have to be having this conversation in 2024, though. It's absolutely ridiculous.
So Tech Life Steph, you do have on a Star Wars shirt for those who are only watching, or I should say only listening and not watching. But do you know what you can get? You can get a shirt that has the Tech John on it. And you know how you do that? You head over to thetechjohn.com. That is thetechjawn.com/shop, where we have all kind of stuff over there. We got hats and hoodies and mugs and mice pads and literally everything you can think of that you would want to see a logo with our silhouettes on it. You can get over at our shop. So once again, head over to thetechjohn.com/shop, where you can pick up some merch that we did some new stuff just the beginning of the year. So we've got stuff that isn't even 4 months old yet.
Nice.
So with that being said, Tech Life Steph, tell folks how they can get at you.
You can follow me all around the web at Tech Life Steph, or visit my website at stephaniehumphrey.com.
And I am at Robb Dunewood on all the things. And we are also at the Tech John on all the things. So come holler at us however you holler until we meet again in a week's time. Peace.